Well, good morning, everybody. Looking at the radar just from yesterday, it was great to see precipitation finally getting to some places that have not seen it in a while. So I'm talking about parts of the Ohio Valley, parts of like the Arkansas River, the Red River of the South. These have been very, very dry regions as of late. And same thing for the Northeast. I mean, the Northeast, I think, is by my opinion, on the drought monitor, is not showing the extent of just how dry it's been there for weeks on end. And we need to continue to watch moisture in that area. Now, on this radar animation, you're starting to see the very outer rain bands of Erin, and it's because the radar typical range is just roughly about 150 miles from the radar center. So that's why you can't see, too far out into the open ocean. Now they do have abilities to extend that, but we're not seeing that because there's no radar data over here. Okay. With all of that though, I do want to show you what the precipitation map looked like from the last 72 hours because, overall, I say we were getting rain into places, but there was a lot of places that were missed by this. Think about where I was just yesterday over near Indianapolis, Greensburg, and I drove from Greensburg to Indy and hit a huge storm that put down, I'm guessing, about half inch of rain in 10 minutes, but that storm was highly local in that area, and that's the way a lot of these storms have been as of late. So just a small caveat to the hopeful tone I have this morning about where that moisture was able to get to. There are still extensively dry conditions across these areas. You look back over the last 2 weeks and you can see the corridor, right? There it is. In terms of being very dry. Now, of course, during that same time period, repeated heavy rains here. A lack of a good southwestern monsoon, which Matt and I have been talking about, is starting to show some signs of life, but like I said, in my opinion, it's 45 days late. There's been some storms down here in parts of Arizona. We recently brought in the deeper trough that came into the northwest, and I actually have more coming for the northwest very soon. But overall, this is kind of the picture that we're trying to paint. If you stretch it back 30 days, now we can really start to see where the drought monitor did do a one-class degradation here. But I think it might need to be a bit more based upon how dry things have been as of late and what the forecast holds. So that's our kind of jump-off point this morning in terms of recent rainfall. If we look right now at some satellite data, we can see some of the outer bits of cloud, the high, thin cirrus around Erin, which is it's a very beautiful hurricane. Look at this almost Fibonacci sequence to the drier air that's kind of working its way in there. Just beautiful to see that. But overall, this is a powerhouse of a hurricane in terms of size and extent of its wind field, and it will be moving very, very close to the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and the winds will be quite strong, as will the waves up the East Coast as the system approaches. I'm expecting significant disruptions across the Atlantic due to hurricane and those shipping routes. Now, if we just go back overnight, we can again see the storms yesterday afternoon, kind of peeling along that boundary, getting into the Northeast. I did want to point out, Matt did a great job yesterday kind of talking about the reservoir strengths. We did that because of a comment. We read every comment. I apologize if there are times we don't get a chance to answer all of them. We'd love to. It's just Matt's got a couple of sick boys at home, and I was over in Indiana, and we're both meeting with groups from Australia this week. So that's some of the reasons why occasionally we don't get a chance to answer all of those. But just have a look here. There's a lot of wildfire smoke coming from some western fires. Now, in context, it's not. We've had much, much worse in our recent historical past western U.S. fire seasons. But it's just a point to say here that we should expect to continue to see more of this going into fall. All right, from that point, I do want to tell you the latest on Erin. Cat 2 is, the center of Erin's going to stay out to open ocean, but you saw how big of a hurricane it is. Very good news, the system that was on the back side of this, which if you go back to late last week, it had the potential for, coming all the way to the Gulf or staying out to open ocean. There's a wide spread on it. We're getting better and better evidence that it is going to miss the United States. And that is actually bringing up an important topic I got to dig into with you. But I do want to point out with Erin, they've now upgraded, this part of the Outer Banks to a tropical storm warning. As Matt mentioned the other day, this is the cone of those tropical storm force winds. And as Erin approaches, we're going to get those stronger winds just off the coast. If we use the ECMWF as guidance here, this is the maximum accumulated wind gusts we're expecting. And you will note that we are expecting wind gusts, well above 50, approaching 60 miles an hour here in the Outer Banks. But it's pretty strong all the way up the coast. From here clear to Cape Cod, we're looking at wind gusts that are going to be in that 30 to 50, maybe sometimes approaching 60 mile an hour range, while the strongest winds, of course, stay well offshore. So that is a huge blessing to keep that away. But still, there's going to be some beach erosion. There's going to be a huge surf. It's going to be quite dangerous along the coast here. Just to show you how big these waves are going to be, this is maximum estimated wave height by the ECMWF. So take note when you get into these colors, we're talking 20-foot waves, 50-foot waves when you see these. And as we play this forward, that's how big the significant wave height is going to be. So this is going to be quite an event. And I just went basically from today on Wednesday through the day on Friday, right there, as this moves on off to open ocean. It eventually becomes a system that gets out into the North Atlantic and affects Europe. Interesting to note, take a look at the effect of Bermuda on the backside of this, reducing the wave height down, kind of downflow of the hurricane. Okay, bigger picture things. Now that we've seen where these next two systems are going, we understand the impacts of Erin. I want to come back to this map. Now it's just focused on North America. It's showing us the influence of the Pacific High and the influence of the Bermuda High. All right, this has been the story of 2025's summer. And that Bermuda High driving all of the moisture in through here, the Pacific High driving the drier air in here, has given us a precipitable water anomaly map that looks like this. Can you see it? So around the Pacific High, there's all the moisture in the warmer colors. There's the drier air in the cooler colors. And then as you see it, the fast winds coming through the Caribbean, a little drier, but then pumping all that moisture in through this corridor. This is what has driven just incredibly humid atmosphere for most of summer. And when you put all that humidity in the atmosphere, to borrow Matt's words, it raises the floor on where you can get those low temperatures. And we continue to see, going back to June 15th, so much of this part of the country, from the Cornbelt getting over toward the Mid-Atlantic and in between the Appalachian Mountains to the Northeast, having such very, very warm overnight lows. And this continues to be an issue. So yesterday I was in that one, the one with the number 2 in it, and I was just talking with a lot of growers. And they're quite concerned as they get out and start doing their yield checks on what this might mean in terms of just keeping it too hot overnight. Because compared to average in Indianapolis, they've had 25 extra days compared to the 1981 to 2024 mean, where the minimum temperatures, were over 70. Come to the south of that, down here to Kentucky, 35. And so there's a lot of concern about this. And remember, most of May and the beginning of June was cold. I went to the 8,500 this year, and I should have wore a coat, I felt like. It was so chilly early. So major increase in overnight low temperatures. Now, what I'm thinking about with this, which I hope helps inform more of the longer range forecast, is seen here. So I'm going to run the European model. Let's take you back to now. There goes the hurricane. This is Thursday. And then you see the system behind it right there. Now, I'm going to stop looking at the hurricanes and the low pressure, but let's give it one last nod. That's the low that's dropping in very cool air. It comes right across Canadian Prairie, deepens over the Hudson Bay. This is Sunday, and we're talking about temperatures that are coming through here into the Northeast that are going to be, it's going to feel like fall. It's going to feel amazing. Look at the blue H's, though. Now, what did you see earlier when I showed you this? 4 months on end, we have had strong flow doing that, right? Now, take a look at this. As we get out there farther, this is going into next week. I don't see that same level of flow, just constant. Let's just stop it out here next Saturday. The Bermuda High, and again, there's Bermuda, is over here. It's closer to the Azores. It's moving over toward, the eastern side of the Atlantic. It's still impressive, but it's not just driving constant flow, bringing just huge plumes of moisture into the Gulf. And I want to know this, because in 4 of the last 5 falls, we have watched the Bermuda High drift. Some years it goes over here toward the Cape Verde Islands. Sometimes it's been up toward Ireland. We watched it go toward Greenland once, and it even sat here in parts of Quebec one of those years. And in 23, I think it was, it didn't. It stayed put, and we were a wetter fall. So to see it moving over there, I just want to know, because if it does, it's going to do 2 things. It's going to open up the Gulf later in the season to sending more storms straight north rather than pulling them off in this direction. That's a hurricane issue. It's also going to allow for more drier air to penetrate into the central United States. Now, this is not a narrative about the West. The West has got to deal with the North Pacific. And Matt talked a little bit about that yesterday and went through the reservoirs. That was something we wanted to do for you. So as we think about this, I have big questions about where that Bermuda High will be when we enter the month of September. Okay, watch the effect of it right now. This is a map of precipitable water. It's just how much moisture is in the atmosphere at any given time to make rain. These values are over 3 inches here, which is huge. As we play it forward, the hurricane goes, and what I'm really thinking about here is Thursday into Friday and Saturday. There goes the deep low, runs across the Canadian prairie, and then as it gets over here by Saturday, Sunday, see this? This is a frontal boundary that's just going to, deliver like fall dry air and cooler weather. And this front might linger right in this region and continue to tap into moisture through the weekend and early next week. And that is where we have our best chances of getting some rain. As Matt mentioned, there is still a surge of moisture coming in here. This is why the southwest monsoon has a little bit of a life to it. But holy smokes, this is a lot of dry air, and it's going to be welcomed, I think, for a lot of folks in this area that want to feel more comfortable. What I'm concerned about is we got places in here that are dry, need another kick of rain and to finish the crops. So yeah, it feels nice, but the crop actually needs a little bit more water before we go into the harvest time period. But take a look, see this moisture down here. We cannot ignore that. And as we play it forward at the very end of this animation, I do want you to see, watch right off the Pacific Northwest coast. There's another deep low coming in. See it right there? Spinning itself up. And I want to know what that one's going to do. And once we get way out here, as the front really dips, do we start to see an increase of rainfall down in this part of Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana? So, big picture right now, if you just look at the flow, this is a couple days from now. This is out on the 22nd. There's our hurricane, okay? Here's the low we're going to watch move across Canada and deepen, driving all that cooler air in. And here's our next system that's spinning its way toward the Pacific Northwest. Now, overall, for the next 15 days, this is what the pattern wants to do. It wants to generate these lows here and have a blocked setup with a high to its north. This is a classic high over low setup. That's what's going to drive some of the heat back west, and it's going to keep more persistent cooler weather here, and it's what's going to stall a boundary out, which is going to increase the rainfall chances in that particular area. But take a look at these temperatures first. Here's our next 5 days. But watch the cool down coming east while the heat goes to the western United States. This would be the 22nd through the 27th, that 5-day stretch. So very, very hot up the west, but much, much cooler, several degrees cooler, 5 to 10 degrees cooler here in the Midwest. Great Lakes, Mid-South is even going to get on this, which is really, really good. And if we even get out there day 5 through 10, and watch this, day 10 through 15, can you see the effect of stacking the high over low? Now all of your heat is kind of here. And we've got much cooler temperatures across a broad section of the United States. And after what has been a very, very hot summer for most folks east of the Rocky Mountains, this is going to be some welcome cooler air coming through. All right, precip-wise, though, there you see it. Look at the effect of that dry air. Over the next 2 weeks, we see the chances of staying drier than average through one place that's been extremely wet all summer, finally starting to show up. What we're keeping a close eye on is how much of this moisture can we get into this quarter of the Mid-South, given how dry it's been here as of late. And even yesterday's scattered storms didn't do a lot to fill in those gaps. And as Matt said, there is a signal for some monsoonal moisture here, but is it as widespread as the map maybe suggests? So overall, as I see it, I love seeing the rain getting into the Northeast. This is more just your convective daily thunderstorm activity where we don't squeeze out the moisture. So it's going to continue to stay quite hot and humid south. It's going to stay humid. We are going to knock down some of the temperatures, but that's the area right in through there we're going to keep an eye on. All right, what's happening? Let's look at some vorticity maps. Okay, there's the spin around the hurricane. Here's this low we're going to watch. Watch it come right over the top of that ridge, crushes the ridge, spins itself up and deepens here by Friday into Saturday. Look at that. And that's what ushers in that cooler weather. Now, what you end up getting on this is flow like that. And this kind of northwest flow is not the thunderstorm generating northwest flow. It's got too much dry air in it, okay? But what happens later is that front stalls out right here, okay? And what you're going to get a little tiny wiggles of vorticity. When? Sunday, Monday. See them right there? And that's what's early next week, starting late this weekend, is going to kick off the chances for storms. And then we're going to watch as we get later in the time period, next Thursday into Friday. There comes a low. It's been in the last few model runs, and I want to see if it gets into the northwest to kind of bring in some precipitation there. We can see all of these things playing out in our precipitation forecast maps, right? So as we go forward, Look at that rain trying to get into parts of New York, which desperately need it. Here it is. Watch. Where am I? I'm Monday, 1 a.m., so very early. Watch the planes coming out of Colorado, New Mexico, getting into Oklahoma. That's the stalled out front. Now, you can almost just see the front. It's right there. And if you're here, there's nothing in this. I mean, it's just bone dry in this area. So we're going to watch that pretty carefully. As we then play it forward, I'm all the way out now, 270 hours in the forecast. This is the last day of August on Sunday, the 31st, the beginning of September. You start to see something trying to come through. But you know what that is? That's that low that's trying to work its way from, the northwest getting in here, bringing in a front. But it's too far out in the forecast to really make much sense of. So probability-wise, this is the chance at getting or staying under a half inch. And there's a broad corridor now that is here. For weeks, it was there, right? So we've now switched this pattern up, and you can see the crisscross nature of that. So wherever you see white, this is where we have our best chances of having wetter weather. Here, here, and here. But I just want to point out the dryness that's going to be coming out of the Canadian Prairie into the Northern Plains, extending all the way to Illinois and Indiana. And the dryness we're still probably going to see down here in parts of Texas as well. Now, we won't talk about the revival of wet conditions in the west until we get into their wet season. We're still at the tail end of the dry summer season out west. When you look at the week 2 forecast, it is interesting. The Climate Prediction Center, the European model, and the GFS all have very similar pictures, but the AI model is trying to bring in wet weather right through the mid part of the country very efficiently. And one of the reasons we're seeing that is because you go out there into next week. This is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Look at this. It's got this other weak feature, this trough that's sneaking through the pattern, initiating those storms. None of the other models have it right now, but we're tending to give more of a nod to the AI model at finding these features and events, even though we're nearly 10 days out in the forecast to do it. So I just want to let you know that there are some model differences well into week 2 that need to be paid attention to in this section of the country. And I know many of you watch me and Matt from the middle of the country, and we need this rainfall to finish off a crop in this area. So I just wanted to point that out. But back to those temperatures from the same model. This is the AI forecast day 5 through 10. I mean, these temperatures are 10 degrees cooler than average. And then this is day 10 through 15. It maintains that while that's stacked, there's your low. And just look at the ridge around it, just keeping things so hot in that particular part of the country. I do mean country. I mean, this is Alaska. And there's a rule of thumb as we get into fall. Whatever Alaska is going to get, just pick the opposite and put it there. Like that. That's generally what we do as we go later on in the season. Okay, I do need to show you some near-term temperatures. I've only looked at the bigger picture. When does this cooler air get here? Because today it's an absolute scorcher here in parts of the northern plains. Still very hot in the southwest. So as we go from today to tomorrow, that's Thursday. Friday's high temperatures, there it is. Saturday, look at the warm up here as the ridge builds west and the trough dives through. So you're just kind of seeing the seesaw nature of the atmosphere. That's Sunday. Monday, on Monday, I've got parts of Kansas that are trying to get into the low 70s, and this is gonna be beautiful here. While the west, the Willamette Valley, the Columbia Basin, the Central Valley just scorch. 100-degree temperatures in Yakima. That's going to be very, very hot, but it doesn't last. I think we're going to break this down pretty soon, as you saw a few moments ago. Now, what I want to know is, what do the models think about after this? There's a cool down. Are we settling into cool? Because I showed you earlier that there's a 50-year upward trend for late summer temperatures here, right? We've seen our falls become a little bit warmer over the last 50 years or so. And I'll just show you this. This is that week 2 time frame, which we were just looking at a moment ago. And the models are just like, bring the warmth back in. Now you need to remember something. Mid-September warmth is nothing like mid-August warmth, and that is nothing like mid-July warmth. So when you see these above average temperatures as we get into that second week of September and beyond, this is not, it's not blazing hot, just an extension of a terribly uncomfortable summer. It's just warmer than average by a couple of degrees. Both the GFS extended and the European extended are doing this, and we have some question about whether or not it's there. I'll tell you what I think the model's responding to at this time frame in a moment, but I do want to show you what the 30-day precip outlook looks like with respect to that. And this is starting to pique my interests a lot. Now, let's go back. Sorry, I don't want to go too far out there. See this? And see that. I'm very, very curious about what is going to be homegrown in this tropical setup in the second half of the season. The second half starts on September 15th. These models have been terrible all summer. We're asking if they're finding a signal in fall as we approach fall. And I don't know. I think it's something to be watched carefully. But I do want to point my finger at one thing that I think could be driving it, and that's going to be this. Matt showed you yesterday, he was talking about, the ocean temperatures, right? So we've been watching these cooler waters continue to emerge. He talked at length about the fact that the ocean temperatures in the middle of the, Pacific are we're getting into La Niña. I mean, this is La Niña, to be honest with you. The trade winds are up. The ocean temperatures are down. That is La Niña to the T. And those trade winds, if you just look at the forecast, see this? This is stronger than normal easterly winds. So we're getting a push of some very strong easterly winds here. And that is, if you ever just want to know, like, what is La Niña? Okay, just look for that. That's what it is. That is the Pacific Ocean, stronger winds like this. That's all that La Niñas are. It's just 10,000 miles of open ocean. So we care a lot about what that particular piece of flow means. So what we're thinking about here is, what might this mean for September and October temperatures? And this is a map that correlates September and October temperatures to ENSO, which is El Nino in the Southern Oscillation. So you got to reverse your thinking. These cooler colors mean warmer conditions because we're talking about La Niña. These warmer colors mean cooler. So this would be a cooler signal and this would be a warmer. But these correlation coefficients are not high, are they? There's other factors that affect this. And when you think about temperatures, it's where there's a more sensible pattern from west to east across the country. The precipitation outlook for September and October is not as clear. So as we plot this, we typically go over, if you look at this here and here, the warmer colors mean drier, okay? The cooler colors mean wetter. So we tend to bring in a little bit wetter conditions here, but we're drier late past the monsoon here. And the reason for that is the jet likes to come in more like this and less like that as we get into September and October, where the jet stream dynamics become huge again. Since we're doing this, why don't we just go out and look at December through February and show you what a typical La Niña winter is? Because I want to back up what Matt was talking about yesterday. Do you remember he showed you the long-range winter forecasts, and they were wet here and they were wet there, and that's La Niña to the T. It's just a copy-paste of what a typical La Niña winter is, and no La Niña has ever looked the same as the one before it or the one after it. They all have a different flavor, which we're going to have to watch carefully. What I'm watching carefully right now, though, comes back to where we started. From now through the end of September, okay, I want to know the strength and size and position of the Bermuda High. I want to know the strength and size and position of the Pacific High. And I don't feel as though the models are giving us solid input on that. 4 out of the past 5 falls, it's been stronger here or here or here, as I told you earlier. Is it going to do that again, or is it going to slide back? So here's what you need to watch if you're east of the Rocky Mountains. If the Bermuda High slides back here and strengthens, tropical systems will get underneath it, and that's going to bring more of the Gulf into Florida into play with storms that begin in the Atlantic. If it slides over here, by the way, and that keeps this region stormy. There's been a lot of questions. We're going to have a stormy second part of our season, right? We have the early season severe weather, May, June, and July, and then we have the second one that typically comes in September and October. If you keep the Bermuda High east, yeah, you will get it. But if it goes west, this whole region goes very, very dry. We start to get wetter conditions in the west early. We tend to be wetter in the northeast, but dry in the middle part of the country. But you know what it also does is it opens up for tropical systems to start here, maybe out of the Caribbean, the Bay of Campeche, the Gulf, and go north. So it's a play in both scenarios on the tropical season. The other piece to this is, what is this high going to do? So our high pressure centers in the northern hemisphere go like this. In the southern hemisphere, they go like that. And we all want to know what is going to be the strength of the South Atlantic high, the one that controls the monsoon, because you see the models dropping the pressure here. If they're dropping the pressure there, that could mean an early start to the monsoon. And the current 40 or 30-day forecast from September 4 to October 4, which is the opening planting windows in Brazil, are generous on rainfall. And that is something we got to watch carefully. That would mean an early start to the growing season in South America. Nothing to wait on. So I'll watch it carefully. We'll talk about it again tomorrow. You have a good rest of your day and stay safe. Thanks.